Calling from a 501 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Blake, the Libertarian of the No Free Lunch infamy. I wanted to talk to you guys, ask you three questions, and you guys can pick the one. Hello?
Hello.
Yes. And you guys can pick the one that you find to be most juicy. They're not gotcha. They're very simple.
Okay.
The one is would you rather people be independent or dependent on the government? The second is do you think that the Trump administration and Republicans generally don't want witnesses to be called in the impeachment trial? And the third is, would you prefer that people get in a position where they must contemplate an abortion or not get in that position in life? The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Blake. I would say that the question is silly. This is the first question. Do I want people independent or dependent of government? There is no one who lives in society that is independent of government. That is an impossibility. That's like saying, would you prefer people have can fly or not fly? Well, it doesn't matter because you know what? We don't have wings. The reality is, can you tell me a person who lives in this country who is independent of the government?
I know a couple, yes.
Who?
They, Al and Sheila, I'm not going to say their last name, but they're close friends of mine.
And
they live in northwestern Arkansas.
They do?
Yes.
And
they live out in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere?
They are completely solar. They have wells. Obviously,
where did they get the solar technology? Did they develop the solar technology?
No, they didn't.
What?
I knew this would happen, and what I wanted from you guys was just a very simple answer. It's a very simple question. Like I said, it wasn't a got you.
No, well, like I say, your question
obviously government exists.
Blake,
obviously government
are you married?
Exists, and it has done things.
Blake, are you married?
No.
You're not married?
No.
You have a girlfriend, boyfriend?
Yes, girlfriend.
When did you stop beating her? It's a simple question.
Sam,
just give me a date.
It's ridiculous.
Just give me a date. Simple question.
Jesus Christ.
All right, let me ask you this. I'll make it even simpler. Did you stop beating her?
Well,
Blake, this is a simple question.
Statement.
This is a question.
Yeah.
It's a simple question. Did you stop beating her?
You're assuming the presumption that I have before.
Okay. And now I think we've been able to illustrate my problem with your question, which is assumes that it's possible for people to live in this country when they're not, in some fashion, dependent upon government.
I didn't say it was possible or impossible. What I asked is,
I didn't say whether you had. I didn't say whether you had or had not beaten your girlfriend. I'm just asking if you stopped.
Like I said, that's a presumption. That's an assumption.
Right. Well, you're presuming that being independent of government is possible.
People have and did and can even currently live independent of the government. It is a possibility.
Well, you told me Steve and Sheila or whatever their names are, and I'm asking
Al and Sheila.
Al and Sheila, where did they get the technology to build this solar stuff?
Shout out.
From other people.
From other people? Where did they get it from? Wasn't government funding that or loans? Entrepreneurship. Wasn't government funding or loans that developed it? I'm curious as to where they got it. I have a feeling they probably got that stuff from China. China certainly poured a ton of money. The Chinese government poured a ton of money into that.
Are they dependent on government over there in China?
Does government own people's minds and thoughts and ideas? And
no.
Okay.
It defends their intellectual
property.
Does government
control all the money? Does government control labor? Does the government control your work and your time and your energy? No.
Well, they don't control it, but that's not what you asked me, is it? I mean, they control some of it. They certainly control.
No, what I asked was, is it better for people to live independent or dependent upon government?
I know, and I answered you that is not. There is no living independent of government. That doesn't exist.
Well, what even is a government?
There's a lot of things that haven't existed until they're realized.
Oh, so in terms of utopia, I would say if we're living in a utopia, it doesn't matter because everything's great anyways. So it really doesn't matter what our relationship to government is because we're in utopia.
Well, look,
Obviously not.
best case scenario, what's
You
a
got me.
government? It's an expression of the people's will, right? The collective will. Now, obviously, we don't really live in a world where it functions that way. But now I'm talking about my ideology, which tends to be more on the socialist end of things. So why is it a bad thing for the people to depend upon the people if the government is just an expression of the people? Like, I don't think it's a bad thing for people to live in an interdependent community because I believe we have a collective responsibility to one another.
I would phrase it as I have the same point, and I would just ask Blake, would you rather depend on government for something like health care or health insurance, or would you rather depend on a private corporation?
Neither. I don't think that health insurance is a
Okay, health
a justified product
Healthcare.
for most people to buy. I mean, obviously,
healthcare-
healthcare is dependent on how you take care of yourself. I mean, the to the degree that you need healthcare in your life depends on how you take care of yourself.
Right. Right.
And
Nobody,
honestly,
because everybody who catches
if you need
cancer
healthcare at a certain
or you
point in
catch
your
a
life,
disease,
the majority of the cost, the majority of the expenditure goes into premiums, deductibles, staff to deal with emails and claims, and all sorts of things that have
Blake,
nothing to do with the
let me
actual
answer
cost
your
of the
original.
healthcare.
None of that's true. Let me answer your original question. Okay. And that is, I do not think it's a bad thing to be dependent on government because every bit of progress we have made as a society has been a function, at least in some part, of a dependency on government. And I actually think that, I think the question is silly because I don't think it's possible to be independent of government. I do not think that the level of dependence on government, if one could actually even assess that, has any bearing on how we do as a society. It is really a function of what government, the nature of that dependency, and what a government is providing. You perceive it as dependency, but yes, I would like to be able to depend on the government to ensure, literally, that I have access to health insurance in an easy and inexpensive, it's going to cost something, but I'll pay it in taxes, way. Yes, I think that would be great. Do I want to be dependent upon government to create a market for Hellfire missiles? Less so. Do I want to feel dependent upon government to deliver my mail? Yeah, I'm pretty good with that. What about providing driver's licenses and making sure that the roads are safe? Yes, I would also like to be dependent upon the government for creating a better public transportation system, one where there's more trains and maybe above ground trolleys, or I don't want to get into the specifics of it because I'm not an expert on that. But broadly speaking, yes, because I don't have the ability to do that. There's a whole host of things that I think that it's very good to be dependent on the government for because otherwise it won't exist.
Does the government have their own ideas and their own money? And I mean, what is the government? Jamie asked the question earlier, and I would say
the government
that the government is force.
At its best.
Energy and time and money and resources exist aside from government.
Well, that's
They're
correct. But the collective,
force.
but government is simply at best, a collective will of the most amount of people that is set up to provide the most amount of benefit for the most amount of people.
The other thing that Jamie said is that it's supposed to be, broadly speaking, for and by the people. Now, I would ask you, at the current level of government that we have, can you imagine that the government gets bigger and has more force and goes anywhere near Jamie's, maybe you could call it utopian idea of what government's supposed to be?
Yes, I can imagine.
Can you imagine it would get any better?
Yeah. Yes. If it is more restrictive of corporate power, yes. The answer is yes.
You refuse to, I guess, acknowledge the fact that there's always going to be corruption. The bigger the government gets, the more corruption there's going to be.
No,
whether it's hidden, whether you choose to
I don't think
address
that's
it or
correct,
not, whether you want to overlook
actually,
it.
I don't think that's
it's your favorite
correct.
politician.
I
You
don't
want to
think
see
that's
the ties.
correct.
I mean,
I don't think that's correct. I think there's always going to be corruption.
How is that not correct?
I'm explaining it to you, Blake. I think there's always going to be corruption. I think when you allow for moneyed interests to have too much power, you get more corruption. If the dynamic between the entities, so for instance, I actually think that local government generally is more corrupt. Does that blow your mind, Blake?
How do you see that?
How do I see that? Because I see in rural areas, I've seen it in cities. Corporations come in, they have so much money that to a guy who's in a city that, you know, of 100,000 people, somebody's going to drop in a couple $100,000. That's real money.
Amazon has, or New York has a ability to stand up to Amazon in the way smaller cities won't.
And I mean, petty corruption, broader corruption, the smaller the government, the more apt it is to be bought out by corporations. We see this all the time, Blake.
I'm going to try something
I would
on
say,
Blake. May I, if
okay.
I may? Because there is a subset of libertarians that is genuinely concerned more with state power and authoritarianism and liberty than they are with letting poor people starve. And if you are one of these people, I would like you to look into the libertarian socialist tradition because it shares a lot of your skepticism of centralized state power, while also allowing for the fact that we are all in this together and have a collective responsibility to one another. Now, they might not call it government, they might call it governance, but there are some similarities. Unless you're a full-on anarcho-primitivist, we acknowledge that we need some sort of structure, some sort of power structure to run the day-to-day activities of any given area. And, you know, hopefully they be federated together because we do live in a large and complex world. Does that make any sense to you?
Or, Blake, are you just a guy who doesn't want to have to pay for other people eating Twinkies?
Well, there's multiple ways to answer your question, Sam, but I'll speak to Jamie's suggestion or comment there. Libertarian and socialist, they're completely antithetical to one another. They're heading in the exactly wrong direction.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, Blake, anything else you want to add to this?
Did you want to address the other two very simple questions that I posed that you haven't answered?
Well, you said choose one, if I'm not mistaken.
You know, I feel
What
like...
was the third one? The third one was interesting to me. The second one was something about witnesses or something.
about abortion.
What was the third one? Oh, do I think...
I asked if it's good that people not get into a position in their life where they don't have to contemplate an abortion.
I mean, I think that's probably preferable. I mean, why go through the expense or having to go to the doctor? You know.
I didn't say have. I said contemplate.
What? Say again?
I didn't say have an abortion. I said contemplate having an abortion. The circumstances in life that people find themselves in when they even have to.
Would you contemplate Would you contemplate? You mean are you talking about just like people shouldn't even think of abortion, or that you shouldn't contemplate having an abortion?
Okay, let me simplify it. Is it better that people don't find themselves in a financially compromising position, an unwanted pregnancy, a relationship status that isn't necessarily good or conducive to having a child and a marriage or a relationship?
Wait, this is the
home
part where you
environment, whatever.
This is the simplified part.
I'm asking you. Is it good that people don't find themselves in the situation where they would have to contemplate having an abortion?
You mean where they don't get pregnant?
Yeah, and don't get pregnant under some bad extenuating circumstances.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is that
pregnancy is not bad in and of itself.
Yeah, I would rather
it's a
not
situation
need
that
an
surrounds
abortion.
it.
Well, I mean, pregnancy in and of itself is not bad unless you don't want a child. And then it becomes problematic. So
what are the precautions that somebody would take to not find themselves in the position to have to contemplate an abortion?
forced sterilization? Are you
No, not
advocating
force. I asked choice. I said choice, not force. Choice on the individual level.
Blake, what are you trying to get at here? I honestly can't understand what you're saying. Do I think it would be better if people didn't have to contemplate having an abortion?
He's saying that women should be punished for their own bad choices with forced pregnancy and birth. Isn't that what you're saying, Blake?
No, he wouldn't say that because
No.
he's a libertarian and he doesn't believe in anything like that, right?
No. Well, I don't even know what she just said, but where this is coming from is there seems to be a large conversation, and it's always been there, I suppose, to some degree, but it's amping up. And I hear Republicans say we need to make abortion illegal. I don't agree with that.
Okay, good. I appreciate that.
I'm pro-choice.
Okay.
I'm pro-choice, but the conversation is not framed in the right way. It's always about the abortion. What you want to do, I would say,
is a lower pregnancy,
maybe this is up for debate as well.
Unwanted
but
pregnancy.
You don't want people to find themselves in that situation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Hillary Clinton proposed.
What's your point?
I wouldn't say just as though I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, Blake,
that
what are you
abortion
arguing?
is-
I said I agree. It would be better if people were in the position to have abortions less, of course. In the same way that it would be better for people to be in a position to have a cavity filled less. I mean, yes.
So for the
Who
betterment
wants
of
to have a
society
medical
on
procedure?
just about every level, why don't we start talking about things like that as opposed to
Like what? Like you mean
Whether-
like? Well, how about this? Sex ed. I'm for sex education. That's a way of avoiding teen pregnancies. We've seen the data on that. In fact, we've seen that teaching chastity actually increases the number of teen pregnancies. So I would do sex education. I would also offer, more free condoms. We could maybe do that through NGOs, but I think we should probably do it through the government. We could do it through schools. I think we could also do this by offering things like the day after pill and day after contraception, the day after chemical abortion drugs as well. I mean,
Medicare for all, cover contraception for everyone all
Yep.
the time. No copay, no questions asked.
yep. All right,
again, you're addressing the situation where an abortion has to be contemplated. I don't.
you know what,
There's a whole
Blake?
lot more to
You're
talk
making
about
me
in regards
contemplate
to
an
that.
abortion right now of this call. Good day, sir.
Goodness
It's
me,
so
Blake.
like these are fun, but they're also frustrating because we're arguing with somebody that we do not agree with on first principles.
Well, I don't
Like-
even know what first principles. I mean,
Like you and I can agree, for example, that society has a collective responsibility to help everybody live a decent life. And you and I can have a discussion about the best way to do that. But if somebody doesn't agree on that, then I don't know what there is to say.
But here's the weird part. Like, I don't know that I disagreed with Blake. Like, I don't think there are people out there going like, God, I hope I'm going to try and get another abortion any more than you would say like, God, I really hope that I can get root canal or I can get, a filling. I mean, nobody would do that. And
I wasn't sure where he was going with that.
I don't know, but it wasn't a gotcha question. It just took about 45 minutes to get there.
Glad he simplified it for us.
Yes. Quite an experience. Calling from a 910. That's what libertarian rule will look like, ladies and gentlemen. So enjoy yourself. Calling from- So the entire panel is asked whether or not government should build roads. Now, of course, this is a dilemma for libertarians who think, because they realize that if the market was to determine whether or not roads should be built, then our highway system would be a shadow of what it is. Our road system would be even just like a slice of what it is. Housing density would have to be huge. We'd have vast swaths of land that would be undeveloped. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm I'm not so sure that wouldn't be so bad if we had just, land undeveloped, untouched, just federally owned land. But I guess presumably in their mind it would be owned by, like Peter Thiel would own, I don't know, half of the landmass of the United States, and we could just go and get maybe hunting permits.
That would be
from him.
gunned by managed by paramilitaries.
Yeah, we would just go and get hunting permits to see if we could take one of Peter Thiel's deer or something to eat. But nevertheless, the best way to answer any question that presents a dilemma to your philosophy as a libertarian, we all know from listening to libertarians who call into this program, is to suggest that some form of a jetpack will make all of this moot.
Mr. McAfee, should government, whether state or local, fund infrastructure, roads, bridges, sewers, electrical grids? And if government does not do it, who or what will?
Each of those are separate problems. We have interstate highways. There are issues involved in right-of-way and various intricate problems involving eminent domain. So we have to address that differently than local problems. With our solar power and our new technologies, local facilities can be created to generate that. So, but the government should, at the maximum, be involved in the minimum part of this entire issue.
Pause it as they applaud for him. Let me translate what he said. Nothing. Nothing. He might as well have just said, trope. Is trope, can I just say trope? Okay.
Mr. Perry?
I'll do my best to answer this in 30 seconds. We're in a hotel. Hotels thrive on having customers stay in their hotel, which means people need to get to their hotel, which means that people are probably coming to visit and do stuff. All of these places thrive on customers, meaning that they need a flat surface for all of their customers to come and go from. Businesses will be incentivized to have these flat surfaces called roads. We don't need to steal the money. Let the people who thrive from them pay for them. Voluntarily, of course.
So what he's suggesting is, in places that attract tourism, you'll be able to get maybe a big hotel company that will pay for a road. Now, do you think the hotel company is going to pay for the road to go anywhere but directly to their hotel? Now, I guess maybe they could get together with maybe a gas station. So it'll be just a the road will go past the gas station, and that's about it. The road to the hospital? We're not going to pay for that. Oh, the road from the fire department to anywhere else? We're not going to pay for that. Unless, I know what it is. If you have a fire going on in your house, then you could decide to build a road from the fire department to your house. That could work out well. I mean, you'd have to have... and then think about it. It would create a new business where you need to have cement that it can actually instantaneously be put down on the ground so that fire trucks could get there.
There's a company in Singapore that does this. They use elves.
There we go.
Who have faster working abilities, and it works better for everyone.
But that gets back. His response is basically a more extreme version of what I was suggesting would have to happen, where if you just had people that were incentivized to pay for the roads. But here we go. That's a more efficient way, incidentally, of doing that, right? Right. If you're a construction company, you just got to hope for someone to build a hotel. But now, why would you build a hotel if there's no road there?
Of course.
Governor Johnson.
Well, infrastructure is the best example of how you can privatize this entire function, and you can do this through user fees to be able to accomplish that. Should government be in charge of that process? Well, you're probably going to have government administrate over it or issue a request for proposal to see this happen. But no, government shouldn't be involved in this. The private sector can be involved in this. Entrepreneurs can be involved in this and can apply the best taxes possible, which are user fees, by those that in fact use the infrastructure.
Pause it. So basically, these special user fees will only go to people who use things like sewerage or maybe roads, or like police, or fire department. Now, if you're one of those people, you'll pay a user fee. They'll call it a user fee, but you know what it's called? A tax.
Mr. Peterson.
The old who will build the roads. Roads.
Yes, the old, pause it, go back. Oh, the old, who's going to pay for things in society that we all want? This little chestnut that comes up. Well,
Infinius deductus.
The obvious of
Blatantly obvious defoius.
yes.
A completely apparent problem to even the most simple thinking people imaginable that interferes with our Scientology-like devotion to this bizarre, creepy neo-feudalism. I'm so glad you brought it up.
I always equate this to that ridiculous question about why can't we fly, to the old thing about gravity.
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 To paraphrase Lloyd Benson, a status but a true wit. There you go again.
Peterson.
The old who will build the roads. Roads. Where we're going, we don't need roads. Because the truth is that in the future we'll have a jetpack. This is unimaginative. They don't see a future where freedom can solve the problems that are created by government. The free market can solve these problems. Take a look at what happened in Hurricane Katrina when people were suffering and there was no electricity. What happened? People stepped in and they started offering generators. And people said, oh, wow, look, they're charging for these generators 2-3 times more than you might have learned on the free market. But they called them price gougers. But the truth is that supply and demand worked. And looks like I'm out of time, but who will build the roads? Roads. We don't need government to build roads.
Are we not psychic about libertarians?
Now, wait a second.
Oh, my God.
I didn't even know.
Jetpacks.
You had written right here, it was...
Jetpacks.
You said Peterson says we won't need roads. I was guessing about the jetpacks.
I live in the
Talking about jetpacks for really long.
Yeah, because I understand the libertarian brain.
Clearly.
If I understand what Peterson is saying here is that Hurricane Katrina gives us a good model. We're not going to need roads. We're just going to need boats. We're just going to be all living on canals, selling boats at a premium.
Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath is not a good model for anything.
I love the idea, honestly, that this guy could raise, and there's no doubt in my mind the only time Hurricane Katrina raised in this debate, right?
Jesus Christ.
The only time that it's raised is in the context of coming up with it was a great opportunity to see how well the market works. Unbelievable.
Let me say.
Privatized. FEMA privatized. Private services down the line. The reason why those buses were sitting 3 hours away, 4 hours away, was because the fifth subcontractor who was contracted to get those buses to where they needed to go didn't want to take them out too early, because if it was a false alarm, it would have cut into the profits that they were making on that contract. And so scumbag is a really strong word, but pathological people gathered there. The only lesson they can learn is that the market works when people are desperate. When the power dynamic is such that one person's life is at stake and the other person has a generator or a candy bar, you can make a lot of money out of that.
If Greg runs for president, I will be his campaign manager. I will be his senior strategist. I want him up there explaining why the other guy's jetpack plan is wrong, and also how we can solve all of the problems in the Middle East with said jetpacks and relocating Palestinians to Jordan in a friendly act of ethnic cleansing.
Okay, here is... Hello, you. I'm Sam Seder. Looking for smart progressive talk that is occasionally amusing? Well, subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to our podcast. Like us on Facebook. And just generally enjoy us.
Hey, how's it going? I was wondering if I could answer your own challenge to libertarians.
Of course.
I'm sorry, what?
Of course.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, I guess I should just explain my position so you don't have to guess which kind of libertarian I am. Philosophically, I guess I'm an anarchist. I'm an atheist to the state and government in general. I just don't believe in it. And I guess politically, I'm libertarian in that I'd be willing to compromise on reducing the size and function of government to like only the things that absolutely cannot be done in any other way. Like where government, in the rare case that government is the optimal solution, if that is ever the case, I'd be willing to compromise until we find some better market solution to whatever that particular is.
Okay. And so give me a sense of what those things are. Like, what do you think the government is doing now that could be picked up by the marketplace? Let's start with what one of the biggest expenditures that we have, right? So the military. Okay. Do you think the military should go away?
What, military? Did you say the military?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it should be like very seriously reduced. Like maybe 1% of the current budget. If you look at just our naval, I think we have between like 10 or 11 aircraft carriers, most of those being super carriers. And Russia has one, China has one, and they're like the old kind, not the nuclear ones. So I think America would be just fine. I don't think there's any real external threat to America. I think geography serves as a natural barrier to most threats. And I think, like the threat of terrorism is largely caused by our foreign policy in the first place. So, yeah, I'd like to substantially reduce the size of the U.S. military.
Okay, so we reduced the military. Now, the next biggest expenditure by the U.S. government, or I guess theoretically, it's not even theoretical by your definition, would be Social Security and Medicare. And do you think that we could do retirement insurance by the private, by the marketplace, as opposed to the government?
Yeah, so I think a better system would be, right now healthcare is... Well,
let's just start with Social Security and then we'll go to healthcare.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Can you say that again? You're kind of breaking up.
Let's start with Social Security and then we'll go to Medicare.
Oh, Social Security. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my argument against Social Security is rather straightforward and simple. It applies to all government. I think in one of your videos once you mentioned that Social Security is like the best thing that government does, or maybe something along those lines.
It's been the most successful. Hold on for a second. It's been, in my estimation, one of, if not the most successful government program that we have had in terms of reducing old age poverty, and it's also one of the most popular.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, like, even if we just give rough estimates, like Social Security, that's the thing that justifies government, I guess. Just that's one example. There is actually no government program that I can point to or look at and say, hey, this government program is so great, it somehow justifies the Vietnam War or the Iraq War or, among the various wars that are going. I believe, like, the government does such incredible evil that no program does good can ever justify the incredible evil.
But
Like,
wait a
if we
second.
measure
Didn't you? I'm
some
sorry. I'm
totality-
confused. Didn't you start this by saying that you're the type of libertarian who is willing to have some government programs as long as it's the minimal amount, the things that the market can't do better than government? So this, what you're talking about, your anarchism. I don't want to get in this argument about like you think there should be no governments, and because if they do, the amount of evil they do does not justify their existence whatsoever. But you've already started this by explaining to me that you're the type of libertarian who's willing to make that compromise and have some government. So you don't need to tell me about how you don't think there should be any government. Right now, we're discussing how you started this, which is that you think there should be some government. Sure. And I'm asking you, I'm going line by line as to the biggest expenditures of this government. I'm asking you, we've heard what you said about the military. We should drastically reduce it. I think you and I are at least have some measure of agreement on that. Now I'm asking you about Social Security. And your answer is not that because of what we did in Vietnam, we shouldn't have Social Security. Your answer is what? Should we keep it or not?